1985 was overshadowed by the Bruns incident, recalled vividly in the video biography Lethal.
In every sense of the word. The brawling started in the last quarter when Jacko copped one as he went for a mark and decided to go on with the business. Only a few minutes later, the umpires' notebooks were out again as Jacko was in the thick of it once more.
Oh, boy! Langford.
Then Leigh Matthews decided to live up to his lethal reputation by stopping Geelong's Neville Bruns cold in his tracks. This incident escaped the umpire's attention, but not that of the Geelong players as they swarmed in on Matthews, who received some instant retribution.
That's going on everywhere here.
As Matthews was led bleeding from the ground, Jacko was back again to offer some obviously heartfelt advice. Bruns too had to be taken from the ground with blood pouring from his face.
I can remember the first thing to myself after Bruns had ran past and I'd sort of struck him. I thought, what did I do that for, you know? And then I thought, oh, they'll be coming. I knew they'd be coming, the Geelong players, and so I just let them come.
Matthews paid dearly for the Bruns incident, not so much in the football arena, where he was suspended 4 matches, but in the public arena, where he was tried and, some say, executed.
Leigh Matthews was one of the central figures in last week's violent last quarter between the Hawks and the Cats at Princes Park. Matthews was involved in an incident with Geelong's Neville Bruns and then clashed with another Geelong player. Bruns suffered a fractured jaw, Matthews a broken nose and concussion. Today, police were on hand at the ABC TV studios to protect Matthews in case of trouble. During the week, the ABC received several phone calls from people saying they would get Matthews when he arrived to take part in today's taping of the footy show. Fortunately, the police weren't needed. Matthews was still sporting the wounds he received in last week's match and was less than happy when fronted by photographers.
You fellas should be ashamed.
Later on the show, Matthews described how he'd been feeling since last Saturday.
Certainly very difficult. I suppose if my life had been the weather this week, last 7 days, been an earthquake, I suppose, is the best way to put it. But there's not, you know, there's very little can be said.
Was that the lowest ebb that your career had reached?
Well, unfortunately, there's matters from last week's match still to be resolved. And in fairness to all parties concerned, I can't make any comments of really much of the events of the last week.
What transpired went way beyond the boundaries of football. Matthews was charged with assault, was convicted in a magistrate's court and fined. Controversy raged over whether police and courts should have interfered in a football incident. And as the bitterness continued, Matthews contemplated turning his back on the game.
Did you feel like getting out of football in the week after that event?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, I'm very, very glad it was my last year of football. I mean, I'd hate to any player to have to go through that in the early part of your career. Probably might well have decimated your career. I mean, I certainly, when I came back playing after that, and only was for half a dozen games, but I certainly wasn't going near anybody in those, you know, at that stage. And so I mean, I'm very glad it was in the last year of my career, because otherwise I don't know whether you could have played with the same kind of aggression and that was necessary. Ruthless, yeah, I'm sure I was ruthless. I kind of have to admit to that I sort of played footy a little bit like war without weapons in a fashion. I mean, I kind of tended to play football in its very most brutal, basic form, probably. And that meant quite regularly I seemed to be involved in dishing out some sort of physical punishment. Now, probably, if we're talking about the rules of the 90s, well, you were smashing them to smithereens. Well, back in the 70s, you're probably bending them slightly, but the umpires thought all you were doing was bending them.
In the grand final of the night competition, Hawthorn would record its only win for the season against Essendon. With Matthews sideline, Michael Tuck would step in as captain. Matthews returned to the side and announced that the grand final would be his last as a player with the club.
It'll be a free kick now. The umpire calling play on as Russell Morris drives it out there towards the wing position, the back fly. There'll be plenty of mistakes in this first quarter, and they're having a go again. We tip this. This will be on for young and old before it's over.
Laker and McCarthy.
Well, they're going in now, and Hawthorn are not taking any funny business today. Look at them going in, piling in there. Players falling over left and right. You pick it up, and you'll find the fighters there.
Matthews and Watson.
Look at them piling up the best I've ever seen for in a grand final, Bob. I can't recall.
One like this,
Look good. Oh, golly, Peter. Talk about stacks on the mill. You've never seen anything like this. How they'll unravel them, I don't know, Peter.
Well, there could be every player on the ground is involved, and you could book the whole two sides, Bob, couldn't you?
As Alan Jeans would say later, in 1985 we wouldn't have won if we started at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Even before the game, you were still an AFL footballer. 3 hours later, you were no longer. And something that I'd wanted to do all my life from the time I could remember died. It was like part of you died, because that was it. You couldn't play anymore.
Matthews would leave the field in an emotional state. One of the greatest players of all time, Matthews had played 340 games, kicked 915 goals, won 8 Club Best and Fairest awards and starred in 4 premierships. Ironically, Vice-Captain Peter Knights would retire the same day. Although not part of the grand final lineup, Knights played 267 matches and missed more than 100 through injury. Visions of his boyish good looks, his perfect demeanour and his dash and high marking were an indelible part of the great Hawthorn sides of the 70s and 80s.